Everything in business changes once you understand this. All you have to do to stay in business is get cash. And to get cash, you simply have to increase the amount you get versus the amount you spend to get it. And managing that ratio and the payback period to get that money back is the lever that will determine how quickly you can grow and reinvest back into your business, back into your money-making machine. At the age of 21, my sales team did over $500,000 of revenue for a $4 billion company. Just last year, I started scaling Skool communities, and I built a portfolio that generated over $130,000 of revenue the last 12 months. And it's in this process now that I find myself wanting to scale the amazing product that we've built. We spent the last 12 months building an awesome product. How do we scale it? The answer lies in LTV to CAC ratio, the lifetime value versus the cost of acquisition in order to make that grow. To be very clear, it does not come down to some tactic, to some method, to some funnel. It all comes down to your operations and your ability to execute to make that model possible. Val, why is all of this so important? What I'm holding here in my hand is a gigantic database folder that I collected from this giant company called Wyndham Destinations, where I'm going to be breaking down all the secrets with you here. And in order to do that, we have to fully understand the context so we can understand the nuance, so we really grasp it and are able to transfer it to growing our Skool community or growing our online business. And if you're like me, you probably didn't realize Wyndham Destinations is not Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. Wyndham Hotel and Resorts you've probably seen, maybe downtown, maybe while you're traveling. They have like nice buildings, beautiful places to stay, and that is not Wyndham Destinations. Wyndham Hotels and Resorts is the company that did around $1 billion of revenue last year. Wyndham Destinations did around $4 billion of revenue last year. What's the difference? Wyndham Destinations is the timeshare company. I had no idea. When I was first starting my first sales job right after college, that's what it was. And if you know about timeshare, you've probably heard all these awful things about it and a horrible word of mouth, and they're probably true. And if you don't know what timeshare is, you're like, that doesn't sound good. Timeshare is one of the craziest industries that exist, because if we look at that ratio, the lifetime value to cost of acquisition, it's probably one of the only industries I've seen that gets a full lifetime customer. Like literally, like whole deed, you sign it, a contract, and it's for your lifetime. And that deed can be passed down to the next generation. And that contract that's signed happens in around a 2-hour sales call, where they grab, get this, that's not the best part, get this, where they grab cold strangers off the streets, 1-to-1, to get them in these sales calls. And in that 2-hour time period, they sign away a contract that is the duration of their life. It's wild! You know, I'm not saying that timeshare is awesome. All I'm saying is that they've found a way to make a lot of money, and we should learn from its success and avoid what it's done wrong. And it's done a couple of things wrong. But we're just gonna be diving, and it's a whole tangent I can go off on if it's like an ethical thing or not. I don't even like to be associated with it, but I need to tell you this origin story because it's the craziest example and the easiest one to understand the true power, the true power of the lifetime value to the cost of acquisition. So let's go ahead and get started, because I'm really excited. Because if you're anything like me, right after college, you've never done business or sales, and you've never probably seen a sales sheet that has 10 figures on it. It just blows your mind away. Your paradigm just shifts. And so I have this phenomenal example. And by the way, guys, this thing that I'm showing off, I probably shouldn't be. I might get in trouble for showing off all these secrets that I'm gonna be. And once you see this, you're gonna be like, oh, that might be stuff that you don't wanna share. But I'm totally gonna share it because it's one of the things that's helped me the most, and it'd be awful if I didn't share it with y'all. So let's go ahead and dive in here. What you see here on my iPad is a real life image of what the marketing team sees. I'm going to start with the CAC. right? The cost of acquisition, this is what the marketing team sees. We're totally gonna be diving into it. And so as you can see here, this is May 14 in San Antonio, right? And this is all one-to-one. There's boots on the ground, a bunch of marketers, probably in the Riverwalk area, talking to all the different tourists and people visiting, families from Texas, the country, all over the world, saying, hey, we have this really cool promotion going on. You can get these X gifts, and all you have to do in exchange is attend this really cool showcasing that we're doing upstairs in the mall, just showing folks like yourself who are on vacation more opportunities and ways to go travel. Basically, the marketer has to invent this sort of offer to entice the person to get into the call. And it could be a list of many things, from a cruise to a week stay to boat ride tickets, dinner on the Riverwalk, and a horse carriage ride if you're a couple. Depending on the avatar and family you're talking to, you have to be quick on your feet and try to get them into the call by putting together some sort of mini offer, a lead magnet, call it, right? And so what we see here is the amount spent with the little mini offers, the little bribes to get you to go, is $67,285 that were spent in this week, right? And the easiest way to calculate this would be to get the revenue divided by the cost of acquisition, therefore giving you the ratio. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we have here is $1,750,000 that was generated by investing, I think it was $67,000 in marketing costs. So for every dollar this company put in their machine, they got $26 back. Incredible returns. Trying to increase the number of total tours, as you see here, they put, as a whole team, in 1 week, around 540 book calls. A total of 536 book calls and a 90% show rate. There was 482 people that showed up. And those 482 people that showed up, 69 purchased, right? That's around 14% conversion rate. I want you to see the marketing aspect first, like what you would see on a Salesforce CRM like this. So you really see how crazy this is, right? And so there's obviously not 100% retention, and that's what we observe here. And now that we have seen this, let's go ahead and see the sales side real quick. So we're like, okay, we understand there's a bunch of people trying to grab cold strangers in areas of high physical foot traffic, like the Riverwalk in downtown San Antonio, making them a mini offer, getting them to go on a call, and a certain percentage of those people convert. Let's go ahead and see the sales side. And this is crazy for me, again, like I told you earlier, because I've never been part of a room talking such high numbers. So when I saw this, I was really blown away, right? What I have here is a real sales sheet from that meeting. This is one of the first sales tracking sheets I had in one of my first sales meetings with all these really intense business people, right? A room full of killers, closers who were making well over 7 figures personal income. What we see here is two sales teams. One is in downtown, one is in this other location, and each sales team has different managers and each manager has different teams. So this is the revenue of each sales rep per manager in each team per location. Cool? So right here in the bottom is the important part. Right here in the bottom, we see the metrics on the sales side of everything. And this is a week, as we can see here, in August. The week 1, the total volume they generated was $1,175,000. The VPG, volume per guest, was $2,665. The closing percentage, as you can see there, is 12%. The average pay per tour is $22,000. The number of tours is 441. The number of deals is 52. So as we saw earlier, for every dollar they put in, they get a very large number back, which is why, if you're wondering why is timeshare still alive, they do all these weird things, because they have a model that works even in cold one-on-one outreach on the floor. For this week in August, let's see the LTV to CAC ratio, right? Another exercise example number 2. The LTV here, $1,175,300 generated. and the cost to acquire them is not displayed here. The example from the first example, which I think was 67,000, and let's see the CAC to ratio here. Assuming the cost of acquisition was the same as the other month, which it probably wasn't, because this being a vacation kind of thing is obviously a seasonal kind of thing. So in this month here, in August, there tends to be less sales than, for example, May, when summer is starting. And so I think you can understand that, like, for every dollar they put in, assuming the cost of acquisition from the other example to this revenue would be, for every dollar they put in, they get $17 out. So their goal in these meetings was how to get this number higher in the sales meeting, right? And in the marketing meetings, it was like, how can we get this number lower? And there's many different ways to do that. Value, lifetime gross profit, these are all terms that are flying around, but they essentially mean how much is that customer worth. And obviously there's like margins, rent to pay for these locations where the meetings are being conducted, the different types of equipment. They had iPads. Every salesperson and manager and marketing rep, every person had an iPad with a Salesforce CRM connected, so they were always vigilant of all these different numbers flying around. And so you can imagine the overhead costs. So lifetime gross profit is the most appropriate thing to use. How can we increase the LTV and how can we decrease the CAC in our online businesses? Show you some ways to do that. Let's start with lifetime value. Obviously, we're not all timeshare companies that can pretty much have a contract and have a lifelong deed be justified. Right? How do we increase the lifetime value of our members in our Skool communities and or people buying our stuff in our online business? Again, the reason why this whole thing matters is because there's gonna be times where you're trying to identify what's the true constraint of your business, what's going wrong, what can we fix, what can we improve. And unless you're going back to your LTV to CAC ratio, and unless you're tracking these numbers, you're gonna have a hard time figuring out what that is. You might assume it's a landing page thing. You might assume it's a Facebook ads thing. You might assume and not truly know. Be trying all these different things that are not the needle moving thing. All right, so how can we improve this ratio? How can we make it better? So let's start with the LTV, right? The lifetime value. So to improve the lifetime value, the first thing you can do is increase price, right? Off the top of my head, the second thing you can do is probably make the operation more efficient, reduce the cost to then fulfill, right? The next thing you can do is you can do an upsell. The next thing you can do is you can do a downsell. And it's funny, let's go back to our timeshare scenario. Timeshare is known for starting with the biggest one, obviously this giant anchor, which is the highest price. And then they have insane operations to make the cost lower. We're not going to be diving into that now. But they can upsell. They can continue to sell you more things, more points. Because it's not the old timeshare model, it's more points, right? As Travel and Leisure, the company, bought them out in 2021. So there's a lot of really interesting ways to upsell these people. But what is very known for timeshare is your downsell operations, because they will keep you there. Mind you, their goal is to, that sounds really awful, get you in that call and try sell you in 2 hours, whether it's good for you or not, whether this makes sense for you or not. They're incentivized. The people, the sales rep, get paid to make the sale in that time period. So to feed their families, they have to just try and get you to buy in that time period, knowing that you probably will not return, knowing that we will burn you and you will not return, because we have this giant money-making machine and we can pull off more people who are walking in Riverwalk, San Antonio that might be interested. Again, kind of sounds awful, but whatever. They are known for trying to keep you there more than 2 hours with this endless series of downsell, from the biggest one to the smallest one, to discovery, a different type of model, to then my pilot program, Triply, which is down here, which is only a $4,500 to a $7,500 package, and it was only 3 years long. So they had this insane system for downsells. Upsell and downsells is also cross-selling. You can sell other stuff, and an example of this is the burger with the fries. What other things can you add to make the total amount that they get when they get there more. All of these things are things that can drive up the lifetime value. Let's go ahead and move on to CAC, right? How can we improve our CAC? So to make the cost of acquisition lower, what we can do is pretty much improve the quality of our offer. Make it easier to say yes, make it harder to say no. Another thing we can do is improve the efficiency of our ads, whether that's creating better creatives, or it's really comes down to efficiency of ads, right? And that's a whole other tangent. Another thing you can do is conversion rate optimization, which is improving, for example, the landing pages, split testing them. Beyond the landing page, that could be whatever script you're using, how well you're using it on the phone. These are all things that will help you improve the CAC. And you're probably wondering, well, how does this apply to my online business or my Skool community? So for my community examples, what I'm trying to brainstorm to implement with my community owners for increasing price, we already have. As the product was iterated, as we made it better, we inherently increased the price because a lot of it comes down to some services that we provide. For example, maybe in the athletic world, if we're helping people improve their health or their fitness, for example, CrossFit, how can we, as soon as you join, onboard you, take you through this whole process to assess your constraints in your training, where your deficiencies are, and how we can create a tailored plan to you as soon as you join so you know exactly what steps to take in the next 12 weeks, as well as the accountability stuff that's going on every month. That's a huge service, right? So that can justify the price being higher. How to reduce the cost. So let's say I'm trying to optimize a book call funnel for my higher ticket, low ticket community, right? Which is like a $14.99 year membership. We could essentially, again, instead of paying all these other people for customer service or things that robots can probably just do better, how can we invest in AI to take care of these things, to free up our attention, our resources, and pretty much our time to better serve the people inside of our community, to better serve the students who came here to learn something? How can we create that better experience? And it comes down to reducing the cost of something, reducing whether that may be the actual cost or the time required to execute that thing. For upsells, again, this can be some type of service add-on that you can do. For us, we don't really have much of big upsells outside of our current offers, which is something that we might do, create different offers for cross-selling. But for upsells, what happens in our community is people tend to join at the monthly and then they upsell themselves into the annual because they really enjoyed the onboarding, the experience, the welcome was awesome. They got quick results that nailed the activation point, right? And so they upsell themselves. That's kind of what we have right now. We might come up with something better. For downsells, scaling low ticket communities, there's not much you can do, but again, if you are on a call, you kind of want to start maybe with the annual and justify all the reasons why, because a lot of cross-selling is also available. Or I don't really use it myself, so I don't even want to talk about it, as you can see, but there's stuff that exists and we might experiment with and I might come back to share with you. Improving the cost of acquisition of our Skool communities, my community owners, the ones I work with, tend to have a large organic following, typically on YouTube. And so we already have pretty cheap cost of acquisition from organic. And so some things that we have done, however, to improve this is definitely the offer. Improving on it, taking seriously the feedback people give to us. And most importantly, what I realized is really the messaging. Because you can have this really amazing offer and be like, yeah, this is what we're running. But if you don't reflect it on your messaging, if you don't reflect your offer in a messaging that is clear in your landing page or your about page, it's as good as not existing, right? So what I learned is the messaging to communicate how awesome our offer is actually equally as important as the design of the offer itself. So the other thing that we have done is ads, right? We have done ads, especially when it was coming to the New Year's, right? A lot of people are in the buying mode in December, trying to get, if you are a business, some stuff out for tax purposes. And so our ads did pretty good. And after time of running ads, you probably see, their performance decreases. So we had to improve our creatives, static versus all these other creative forms, make this better? How can we take stuff from other industries to improve our creative? Because, for example, if you are in an industry that's not that innovative like surveying, you have to jump into other ones and grab the best stuff and bring it here because you are the leader in that industry. So, like, copying your competitors isn't good because they're smaller than you. And so improving conversion rate optimization, this is something that is definitely possible in low-ticket communities like the ones I run with automation. Whether that's a soap opera email sequence as soon as they join to get the story of your creators and why they should trust you and like your brand, what you stand for, or SMS or email kind of like automation to keep nurturing you as a lead. That's having some sort of AI that kind of acts as a setter that's talking to these people, is able to answer the questions, stuff like that. I don't want to speak too much again on it because I'm not going to say I'm like an expert on it, but like that's some stuff we have tried and some ways to do that. If you are operating in a Skool community and are trying to scale it, especially if it's a low ticket like the ones I'm helping to run, for my high-tech communities, these, again, could differ. And that's the funny part. Like, you just have to really understand your business well. And although it varies, these are the fundamental concepts. And the last thing I want to mention is what I want to do, my plans for scaling my communities, right? Because I'm in the trenches with you. So, like, for example, something that's like a mind fuck is this. So let's say there's two scenarios. Which one would you pick? The lifetime value here is like, let's say, $5,000. Right? And the cost of acquisition here is, let's say, like $500. This is scenario 1. Scenario 2, the LTV is $1,000. And cost of acquisition is $200. Right? To the two scenarios presented, which one would you pick? A lot of people might say, hey, this cost of acquisition is less. This is the one I'll pick. But the funny part about picking number 2 over picking number 1 is, although that is true, this cost of acquisition is lower than this one, the ratio isn't necessarily better. For scenario 1, the LTV to CAC ratio is 10 to 1, and the LTV to CAC ratio for scenario number 2 is 5 to 1. So would you invest $500 to make $5,000? Obviously, yes, but this is a mindfuck, and what we're dealing with right now as we try to scale maybe perhaps number of creatives we put out in terms of organic, in terms of ad, just like how can we get more people to know our stuff, right? And so the small business owner is like, this is better, but the truth is that's what's limiting you. And I promise you, I say this because I wish I could talk to my younger self and be like, hey, don't be afraid to crank that machine once you see it running. Because we did an ad campaign, for Black Friday last year, and it did really well. But we only put like a couple $100. For any marketing budget, this shouldn't be a budget. It should be like, how much can you put in that and crank it? Like, crank it. You're getting a $10 bill for every dollar you put in. And so I need to avoid being this business owner that's like $200, that's great. No, I'm trying to become the person that's like, let's crank this stuff. And I needed to reflect on my timeshare memories and be like, yo, the only reason why this company is this big is because they're investing $67,000 per week to get a $1,750,000 return. So putting this in the machine feels kind of crazy, but like the return, it's hard for the new person to understand the difference between this 5-figure and the 7-figure. And I say this to say, like, I've spent less than 7 figures on ads, but we have done ads and we've done well. So a lot of scaling this year is in scaling the amount of creatives we put out, whether that be ads, organic, whatever. But like, that is our marketing. A little bit inside to my brain, like, hey, I don't have all the answers, but reflecting on this gigantic operation that I was a part of at 21 and like learned a lot from, the answer is here. You already know what to do. It's just like, can you implement? And I hope to find a way to implement this easy so I can come back here and give you all the value. But that is what we're working on. And I hope you found this lifetime value to cost of acquisition helpful, breaking it down in terms of a real life example and how that transcends over to the online realm with Skool. And a little bit about how I see it, and I'm trying to scale my own communities because it's my goal to hit 7-figure portfolio by the next 12 months. And so And what it really comes down to is, are you willing to spend more to get a better quality customer and avoid this like small business owner trap of like, let's go broader, let's do all these things to increase the top of funnel, but like it's more trash that's coming in. This is me yelling to myself. The last thing I want to leave you with is, are you willing to spend $1 million on a customer that ends up paying you $20 million? You have to pay to play. And that is the big takeaway from timeshare. And the big lesson to remind myself with is you gotta pay to play. And we're gonna be diving into this mindset because we have cash flow, we've built an exceptional product, and it's time to scale. So, I'm pumped! Peace.